Hello, my name is Goon Han, and I was awarded for the human rights sector. And today I'm going to tell you how I get interested in human rights and what I have done and how I'm planning to do in the future. So when I was in the elementary first grade, our teacher showed us a video clip from UNICEF, and in the video, children are really suffering. So I thought that the world was not as dreamy place as I thought. Before, I thought that world was like a la la land where everyone could fulfill their dream and every life was so dreamy. But at the video, when I saw the many children suffering, I just realized that I was a lucky one, and in the other parts of the world, many children are suffering and their children's rights and their basic rights are being abused. So watching the video clip of the children being suffering was my motivation to get an interest in the human rights. So throughout my days, I really tried hard to promote the human rights as a student and as a people. One example is volunteering in the Refugee Policy Researching Club. When I was in the middle school, I joined in the Model UN Club, and one of the topic for us was starvation. And while researching about this starvation, I get to know that how refugees was maltreated in the refugee camp. So that was a motivation to get interest in refugee. And as I became the high school student, with the students who also had the same passion and same interest in the refugee, we gathered a club called the Hearts and Hands. So in that club, we conducted various activities in order to promote the rights of refugees. One of our annual events is the fundraising. We opened a booth in our school festival, and so we got donated from our school students, and we donated money to the UNHCR or ADRF. In the booth, we tried to make students more feel intimacy with the refugees. So one of the main events which we have done before is to share the food which refugees receive in the refugee camp. We asked the UNHCR of the food which refugees get in their camp, and we got the recipe and we tried to make it, and we prepared it to our school students so that the students can be more familiar with refugees and get an insight how they're actually living. And one other example is signature campaign. We tried it two different purposes. One of the purpose was to get a sign in order for the UN General Conference, and one of the reasons was to get a sign in order to change the current Refugee Act in Korea. Well, our second purpose to change the Korean Refugee Act actually failed, but even now we are also preparing for another chance to change the Korean Refugee Act in our club. So, and one other activity which I have done really with passion was to teach philosophy for the multicultural based children. So we have a local center for the children near our high school, so I have been volunteering there since I was 9th grade. So I thought that I should teach them academic subjects like maths or English or Korean, but I thought that do they really need this sort of program, this sort of subjects, because they are already taught in our schools. And so I thought about another subject which I could really teach them and which could really benefit them. So I came up with philosophy. Well, philosophy is not the really actual academic subject which school teaches, but philosophy gives the students and the children ability to think. And I believe that the ability to think is just the exact thing which they should get. So at the first time I began with the what is justice from the Michael Sandel, and actually I failed because most of the children was not really actually enthusiastic in joining the class. So I tried to find other ways. So I ended up with acting, making a script, or making a film, or sorts of other different ways so that children can be more interested in the class. So I ended up really a successful class, and even until now, every Tuesday, I go to the local center and I teach children philosophy, and they're really also being enthusiastic and engaged in the class. So I believe that this sort of activity of teaching philosophy is one of the ways that I really promoted and really helped the children, because unlike the subjects which is taught in their school, philosophy, the ability to think, really will help them in the future, because if they do not know who they are and what they want, they might end up in the future they might end up in the place where they have never dreamed of and they never wanted to dream. So I believe that teaching them a philosophy, the ability to think, is one of the things which I have done and which I have really successfully ended with. And another thing which I have done is to research about East Asia and Middle Asia. Part of my family lives in Japan, so from when I was young, I was really exposed to Japanese culture, and also since my second language is Japanese, I was really into Japanese culture. When I was in high school, ninth grade, when I was in the 10th grade, I read a book about Taiyo no Ko, which is about Okinawa kids who experienced the discrimination due to the Japanese. While reading the book and knowing the fact that the Okinawa peoples and the culture was obliterated due to the Japanese, I thought that it really was similar with what happened to Korea during the Japanese imperial era. So, based on that fact that they were really similar, I did more and more research about how they were different and how they were similar. But luckily, there were some students in our school who were also interested in the East Asia culture. So we ended up with a team and we published a book about looking inside to the East Asia culture. So I thought that was another example that how I learned that human rights were violated during the imperial era. And about the Middle Asia, I have a subject called comparative government and politics in our school. And when I was learning, I learned that more than rule of law and rule by law, they're called Sharia, which means that the moral code or the justice in the country is due to the religion. And I thought that was really interesting because they were not really stuff like law. So I was just merely interested at first, but while I learned more and more about Sharia, I thought that they have some problems about the human rights, because in some countries like Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which I researched the most, the Sharia law and the UN Human Rights Charter, which they signed, has a really conflict. So I thought that they really need to be moderated in some way. So I studied with other students and some with help of the teachers. I studied about how the Sharia law actually violated the women's right to work in Saudi Arabia, and how in the long term it harms the economy. So after doing the long research and with the help from the actual women from the Saudi Arabia who I interviewed, I wrote a paper about how examining Sharia law as an obstacle to the women's right to work in Sharia and its economic effect. And based on this experience, I learned that even though we have United Human Rights Charter, which promotes the human rights all over the world, it does not really fulfill its purpose 100%. And I learned that we need to do more negotiating with the inside the countries, such as religion. So what I want to do in the future is that I want to study about either social policy or law, or maybe politics, because throughout the various experiences which I learned and done through my whole days, I learned that we really have to find a practical way in order to solve the human rights issues. So based on the experience, I conclude up that when I go to college, I really want to participate and study the subject which I could really actually give help to the people whose rights is being abused. So that's my plan in the future, and in the near future, such as gap year, I really plan to go on volunteering in the East Asia or Middle Asia. Thank you for listening.